Part 52. Royal Lin Army rescued the emperor and concubine when in time. Time gradually passed, but Xia Linxuan hadn't woken up yet. Pu Qiutai was so anxious that he suddenly knelt down on the river beach, raised his hand and said solemnly, "The sky is above. I, Pu Qiutai, would rather feed the tiger with my body. Only ask for peace and tranquility in the world, and seek perfection in the sky. Everything that can be done has been done, and the rest can only be left to God to decide." Pu Qiutai looked at Xia Linxuan, who had passed out in a coma, and thought of the consequences of this man's death. All the hatred in his heart was replaced by fear. After another quarter of an hour, Xia Linxuan finally woke up, feeling some tightness on his body, and as soon as he looked down, he saw the clothes that had been knotted on his chest by Pu Qiutai. "Are you awake? Would you like to drink some water? How do you feel now?" The familiar voice of the lover sounded in his ears, full of concern. The king, who had always been domineering, suddenly felt a little sour in his nose, and God knows how many years he hadn't experienced it. "Qiutai, even if you want to stay by my side and continue to endure the torment, you still don't want me to die, do you? After all, you don't only have hatred and anger towards me, but also a little bit of affection, don't you?" Xia Linxuan grabbed Pu Qiutai's hand, so that all his movements couldn't help but stiffen. Then his hand was thrown down, and when he looked up, he saw Pu Qiutai's eyes full of anger, and heard him grit his teeth and say, "Don't be sentimental, I have no feelings for you at all. Then why don't you take this opportunity to kill me to get revenge? I said that if you want me to die, you don't even have to do it yourself. Leave my wound alone, and I will naturally bleed to death." Xia Linxuan looked at his lover for a long time. "Is your mouth hard? It doesn't matter. Just keep your mouth down. Anyway, he knows in his heart that Qiutai can't watch him die, and that's enough. With the things he did that people and gods were angry about, he would not have expected his lover to turn all those anger and hatred into love because of this life-saving grace. I really want to kill you." Pu Qiutai quickly interrupted Xia Linxuan's words. "But what you said is right, I am very easy to be soft-hearted. No matter what, you saved my life, I can't take advantage of your danger to ask for your life. Not to mention, although I don't want to admit it, but I have to admit that you are a good emperor, you are alive, and the people of the world still have a peaceful life. If you die, the prince is young, and the people are sinister, who knows what the world will become." When he said this, he looked at Xia Linxuan and said in a deep voice, "So, do you understand? I have saved you for the people of the world, not because I do not hate you. Even so, I'm happy enough. In any case, there is always something in me that Qiutai agrees with. I didn't expect you to be able to forget those injuries so easily, but since you agree with me, my life will be long for decades, and I will be doubly good to you and the people of this world. Maybe one day, Qiutai, you will let go of your hatred for me, maybe you will also develop feelings for me, and that will be enough. Qiutai, you are a kind and soft-hearted person. This is really my greatest luck. Lucky you're a big-headed ghost. Pu Qiutai is so angry. This bastard is simply going to eat himself. Even if he saves him today, he won't let go. What does he think of himself? A delicious snack? Or chicken, duck, fish, meat? The saddest thing is that this bastard doesn't die. He is really a fish on the chopping block, and he can't escape. But I just didn't care to kill this bastard. Okay, don't fight. If you hit my wound and bleed again, I'm really going to die." Xia Linxuan saw that Pu Qiutai was about to beat himself, so he hurriedly smiled and begged for mercy. "Are you scared now? Wasn't it awe-inspiring just now?" Pu Qiutai squinted at him, and a cold snort escaped from his lips. Just now, I thought that Qiutai might be ruthless, so all thoughts are lost. It is better to die. Now I know that Qiutai also has a love for me, whether it is because of the grace of saving lives or the people of the world. Anyway, you are always reluctant me to die. Don't I immediately ignite my fighting spirit? Qiutai, don't worry, I will live well. Protect you and love you for the rest of my life. Fuck off. Pu Qiutai once again shook off the hand that was grabbed by Xia Linxuan, staggered up and looked around, only to see that there were no fireworks in the distance. At this time, it was already noon, and when he was calculating in his heart how far he and Xia Linxuan had been washed away by the river, he heard the people under him say leisurely, "Don't worry. The guards are probably coming here soon. There is no one around here, and it should still belong to the scope of the hunting ground on the outskirts of Beijing." Hearing Xia Linxuan say this, Pu Qiutai relieved. He staggered forward a few steps, picked up a dead branch on the ground, and muttered, "Anyway, let's start a fire for our husband. You have so many wounds on your body. You can't wear wet clothes." "Huh? Qiutai, you can actually make a fire? It seems that I still underestimated you. I thought you were a great talent." Xia Linxuan looked at his lover playfully, but saw that he suddenly stopped moving, and then glared at him viciously, and after a long time, he threw away the withered branch in his hand, and said in frustration, "It's useless to be a scholar. I really understand it now. What about being full of economy? I'm just a useless idiot." "How so?" "Qiutai, you are a great talent. Not a stupid person." Xia Linxuan couldn't help but regret his lover's lost appearance when he saw it, and hurriedly comforted him, while he raised half of his body and grabbed Pu Qiutai's hand. Let him sit down beside him, and said softly, "The guards will probably come after a while. You are also injured, and you have been rushing in the river for so long. And your physical strength is probably not good. It is better to come and sit with me, and wait for the guards to come and clean up. It's really uncomfortable to be wet. But Pu Qiutai can't make a fire, so it's helpless. It is not easy to make a fire in the wild, and there are no tools. Not to mention that this spring day is when the grass grows and the warbler flies, and it is unrealistic to expect to drill wood to make fire or anything." So, he thought about it, and sat down from Shanruliu, but he didn't sit next to Xia Linxuan. "Qiutai, you see I'm like this," a certain emperor cried pitifully, trying to use the strategy of mourning. Pu Qiutai glanced at him. "I thought I was kind enough that I didn't take advantage of your danger to ask for your life. Didn't the emperor just say it? I'm just too soft-hearted. And you won't be too greedy. A good person does it to the end, and if he is soft-hearted, he will be soft into mud. Anyway, you are so soft-hearted, and you are not willing to kill me. So why not do good deeds again?" "Ah!" The shameless His Majesty Emperor didn't wait for him to finish speaking, and suddenly screamed in pain, which really caused Pu Qiutai to look at him a little nervously. "What's wrong?" "The wound was just pulled up, and it hurts a little. You obviously didn't move just now. How could you be involved?" Pu Qiutai glared at Xia Linxuan. "Your Majesty, don't get an inch." "I'm going to have to make an inch. What's the matter? It's already painful. And it's not just the back wound, you come and see, the legs are full of injuries." Xia Linxuan stretched out his arm and straightened his legs, and sure enough, a hunting suit became tattered, and all the traces of abrasions and bruises were faintly revealed in the tattered clothes. Pu Qiutai watched Xia Linxuan take out a rogue posture there, and he was really helpless. If an emperor doesn't even want the image of an emperor, who can do anything with him? What's more, some of those wounds were still oozing blood, making Xia Linxuan look very miserable. Even if he wanted to try to harden his heart, he still couldn't help but care. Your Majesty, you are the Emperor, can you not look like such a scoundrel? Pu Qiutai sighed, and finally moved to Xia Linxuan's side, but he was grabbed and pulled into his arms, and then he was kissed fiercely on the face. Pu Qiutai was caught off guard, fell into Xia Linxuan's arms, wiped the saliva off his face because of the struggle, and said angrily, "Enough, when is this coming? The Emperor still wants to come nonsense. Whatever you say is dying. It's all pretending, isn't it? Is it pretending? You don't know about Qiutai? The wound on my back can be felt to the bone, and if you hadn't been kind enough to bandage me, I would have bled to death by now. You just talk nonsense. Look at the way you are jumping around now. You can't die of bleeding for half a day." Pu Qiutai complained angrily. Originally, this shameless guy in front of him who was pestering himself like an octopus refused to accept it even if he went to the underworld. "Oh, that's because Qiutai bandaged me. And then I didn't bleed anymore, so I regained some strength." Xia Linxuan blinked innocently. "Otherwise, how could I just hold you and not do anything now? What else do you want to do?" Pu Qiutai was furious. "The curtain is on the ground. The rest of your life after the catastrophe, the guards will be able to find it soon. What else do you want to do? You are the Emperor. Even if you are a scoundrel and domineering, maybe you can't be so shameless? Don't be shameless to this point? What I mean is that if I still have the physical strength to get up, how can I not bandage the wounds of Qiutai? You also have some small wounds on your body, haven't you noticed? Also, if my injuries weren't so serious, I would have been able to make a fire and burn firewood, and we wouldn't be here in wet clothes and just waiting for help." Gah? What the bastard is talking about? I actually misunderstood him? I thought he wouldn't forget those shameful sex things in this situation, and wanted to experience the stimulation of a wild one. Oh my God. Yourself, how could you think so crookedly? Pu Qiutai's face suddenly turned red to the root of his ears. But Xia Linxuan didn't seem to see it. He looked at Pu Qiutai, innocently, blinked his eyes and asked, "What does Qiutai think I want to do? Why are you so angry?" Pu Qiutai hated to find a crack in the ground to get into, and glared at Xia Linxuan angrily. He couldn't speak, but he thought in his heart that "you bastard" is usually too shameless, so I misunderstood. That's right, that's it, it's all your fault. It's so cute and seductive that my lover looks so embarrassed. Xia Linxuan swallowed a mouthful of saliva quietly, snickering in his heart. Fortunately, he didn't make it clear before, so he had such a chance to be a general. But it seems to be quite exciting to be able to experience the taste of wild cooperation with your lover in such a place. But if he really dares to do this, I'm afraid that Qiutai will really kill him, not to mention that the injury on his back is indeed very serious. And now he really doesn't have the physical strength to eat his lover." Annoyed and angry, Pu Qiutai walked more than a dozen steps away from Xia Linxuan, turned his back and sat down, refusing to pay attention to the bastard. Hearing the cry of pain from behind him, he also forced himself to harden his heart and not turn back, knowing that His Majesty Emperor is the best at beating snakes with sticks. After a while, he felt that the voice seemed to be getting closer and closer, and when he turned around in confusion, he saw Xia Linxuan like a snake that was struggling to molt, crawling over here. He was shocked, and he didn't care about the anger that was teased by this guy just now. So he quickly got up and ran a few steps forward, and shouted angrily, "You are crazy, what if you tear the wound open? I wouldn't have bandaged. I saw Qiutai sitting here, and I wanted to come here." Xia Linxuan smiled nonchalantly. The wound behind him really cracked, and the blood slowly seeped outward, the wet clothes like a cold plum in the snow. Pu Qiutai was completely speechless, and sat down with Xia Linxuan's pulling only to hear the other party pleading in a low voice. Okay, I won't tease you anymore, Qiutai. Can you lie in my arms for a while? As long as you lie down beside me, I will be at ease. Don't, Pu Qiutai categorically refused, but looking at Xia Linxuan's complaining eyes, he couldn't help but soften his heart by 2 points, turned his head and whispered, "Wait a minute, the guards will probably come over and let them see it." Embarrassing. It turned out to be because of this. Xia Linxuan had a smile on his face. So, if there are no guards coming, Qiutai is willing to let me give me a good hug and accompany me to lie here and watch the white clouds in the sky, right? Yes. To Xia Linxuan's surprise, Pu Qiutai agreed very simply. And he was puzzled, so he heard the other party smile bitterly, shook his head, and said, "Don't you often say that I am your servant? Hee, no matter how shameful things are. I've experienced everything. I went to bed every night, and now I'm just lying down with you. What's the point?" Qiutai, His Majesty Emperor, who had always been invincible because of his shamelessness, was speechless for the first time. He looked at Pu Qiutai in a daze, although he couldn't see the pair of sheared eyes. But there seemed to be a faint sadness on his beautiful side face under the sun. Unexpectedly, His Majesty Emperor thought of what Pu Qiutai had just said. What about a full stomach? Useless as a scholar. Yes, his Qiutai is not just a sleeper, he is a genius who has not been met in 100 years, full of wealth and wise. Also, he is already a leader in the Xilan at a young age. I think that when he was the top student in high school and was praised by the emperor of the Qing dynasty himself, he should have been full of ambition to serve the country, right? It's a pity that the emperor of the Qing dynasty only loves his talent, but he won't use him, and in the end, he made him gloomy and retreated to the countryside. His Qiutai is a pillar of talent with smart and ambitions, and he should have assisted himself in governing the country and the country in the court, and sought a peaceful and prosperous era for the people of the world. But now, because of his love for him, he forced him to be trapped in the deep palace and be a male concubine. This should be the biggest insult to him, right? No wonder he lives like a year, always saying that he is suffering, but he still fantasizes that as long as he loves him, he will one day be able to exchange for his love. How narrow, selfish, and domineering his love is. He just thinks about his own happiness. But how can he ever think about what Qiutai wants? Xia Linxuan suddenly realized at this moment, and looked at Pu Qiutai in a daze. He only felt astringent and painful in his heart. At this moment, the suffocation and pain in his lover's heart, he seemed to be able to empathize. "Qiutai, after returning to the palace this time, you and I will listen to the government together, okay?" Suddenly hearing this, Pu Qiutai only thought that he was in a dream for a while, and looked at Xia Linxuan puzzled. What kind of moth is this guy doing? Listen to politics together? Is he telling a joke? I was still thinking just now, the emperor of the Qing dynasty loves your talent, but he can't use it. But when you turn your head and think about it, isn't that the case with me? Qiutai, you have lofty ambitions and smart. If I trap you in the deep palace forever in the name of loving you, what face will I have to say that I love you? You should be in the court to be glorious. So, listen to the government with me. You can give full play to your talents, assist me in governing the country, expand the territory, work side by side with me, and we will give the people of the world a prosperous and stable, peaceful and prosperous world, okay? Pu Qiutai looked at Xia Linxuan stupidly. He was completely confused by the other party's sudden suggestion. Reason told him that this was out of place, a male concubine, listening to politics with the emperor. This was something that had never happened before, and Xia Linxuan was an excellent emperor, and he didn't need to help him deal with government affairs by himself. However, My mind can't help but be occupied by memories. Just as Xia Linxuan thought, Pu Qiutai has both virtue and talent, and he is already famous all over the world at a young age. How can he not have his own ambitions? And these, originally with the fall of the Qing dynasty, have been sealed in the deepest part of his heart. But today, Xia Linxuan's words made these sealed ambitions and enthusiasm surge again. Your Majesty, don't laugh, I'm just your male concubine and your servant. How can I listen to politics with you? You are not Li Ji, who is frail and sickly, and you don't have any strategy for governing the country, so you let the Empress Wu help. But you are an excellent emperor, governing the country. And you are dictatorial. Listen to politics together. What else can I help you with besides sitting next to you? Even though he was instigated by Xia Linxuan, Pu Qiutai still quickly realized that this kind of thing was impossible. He smiled slightly bitterly and said softly, "The emperor can think that the minister used to be an ambitious person. This is already a great love for me, as if I should thank you well, but it is the emperor who took away my dignity and ambition as a minister. So I will not be grateful to you. I know that Qiutai has a reason to hate me." Xia Linxuan sighed, thinking of letting his lover sit beside him as an imperial concubine or queen. He was afraid that he would also feel embarrassed. Pu Qiutai is very sober. He knows that it is enough for the emperor to have only one, and the so-called listening to politics together, in fact. He is just an ornament, which cannot fundamentally solve the problem. How? Xia Linxuan touched his chin and thought hard, and suddenly heard Pu Qiutai whispering beside him. It seems that the guards are coming, and I heard the sound of horses' hooves. Xia Linxuan was stunned, and then listened attentively, and sure enough, he only heard the sound of horses' hooves in the distance. If he hadn't been immersed in his own mind, he should have heard this voice earlier than Pu Qiutai. After all, he is a person who practices martial arts, and it is a basic skill to see 6 ways and listen to all directions. The person who came was really the guards of the Royal Lin Army. Pu Qiutai stood up. His cloak had been taken off by Xia Linxuan in the river, and his outer coat bandaged the wound of the other party. At this time there was only a middle coat and pants. Fortunately, the weather was warm in spring, and he didn't feel cold, but at this time, he couldn't take off these 2 clothes and wave them as flags. So he had to wave his arms and shout as hard as he could, expecting those passing by the Royal Forest Army to find out. Those Royal Lin Army were originally looking along the riverbank. Although they were trotting on horses, their eyes were fixed on the riverbank. Before Pu Qiutai could wave his arms, they found that there seemed to be 2 people on the riverbank. And they were about to step forward to check, when they heard Pu Qiutai's call. In an instant, the leader of the Royal Lin Army and Jing Lianghou couldn't help crying, "Thank God. The emperor and concubine Wen have found it, and the heavens will not die for the name, and they don't have to apologize for their crimes with death." The guards quickly came to the river beach, surrounded the curtain and let Pu Qiutai change into dry clothes. While Xia Linxuan did not dare to touch him because there was no imperial physician at the scene, and finally had to carry the person on a stretcher, and more than a dozen strong eunuchs took turns to carry the stretcher and rushed back to the hunting ground.